What up, meatheads? This is Travis, American Butcher, and I'm on vacation. So this week, David takes the reins, and he had the pleasure of interviewing Sarah from Good Stead Farms in Michigan. They go over farmsteading, small farming, and one thing I think is very important is cost and what she does to determine what's profitable. And she really does the due diligence to find her margin and her labor costs. And anyone out there who's thinking about wanting to be a small farm or wanting to be a farmsteader, I think you're going to get a lot from this episode. I certainly did when I was editing it. So sit back, enjoy, and here's Sarah and David.
Good cutting enhances the quality of good meat. In his way, the meat cutter is an artist. Poor cutting results in an inferior piece of meat, regardless of quality.
Hey everybody, David here. This week we're talking about starting a farm 101, and I thought that instead of giving you a bunch of speculative information or doing research on national averages, we go straight to the horse's mouth and ask somebody who's currently running a successful farm that was started recently. So with me today, I have Sarah, the owner and manager of Good Stead Farm in Michigan. Not so coincidentally, the place where I am the livestock manager. And I thought that since she's in her third season at this new farm that she owns, she could give us some information about how to start. So thanks for joining us, Sarah.
Thanks for having me.
Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself, your agricultural background, what led you into it, and what led you to start farming?
Yeah, so I went to college for something completely unrelated. I was an anthropology major and left college feeling like I didn't have too much in the way of tangible skills. So after college, I moved out to the East Coast, specifically Maine, and started working on small organic production farms as an apprentice. I ended up doing several seasons as an apprentice at various farms and loved it so much that I continued on and eventually started managing. Then got to a point where I was ready to own and go forward on my own. So I had, a good 6 years under my belt farming before I decided to start my own. Okay.
Now, I know you well enough to know that you have some interests around homesteading just in general. I think that if something happened and the particular niche that your market is part of, and you could no longer farm as a living, that you would have interest in homesteading or starting a farmstead somewhere. What made you decide to farm for income as opposed to starting a homestead?
For me, there was a great challenge in being able to provide for myself with the skills that I had and the knowledge that I had. I also wanted it to be something more than just a hobby or something that I did after work. I wanted it to be my work, and I wanted it to be how I made my living. And that was a value of mine, and that was something that was very important to me. In regards to Michigan,
why Michigan?
Well, yeah. So I loved the East Coast and I loved farming in Maine. There was a very strong agricultural community there. So leaving was hard, but when, starting to look at land prices and starting to consider markets, Maine was very saturated in the way of small organic farms. Land prices are very high. And, I have family in Michigan, so I knew that I immediately had a social structure, a familial structure for which to kind of lean on in the beginning stages of starting this business.
Yeah, that's similar to me. One of the reasons why I started looking outside of Washington, aside from my job coming to a close at the time, was I knew that I wanted to eventually be working for myself, and land prices in Washington, partially due to the berry boom, partially due to our friends at Amazon and all those jerks, land in Western Washington has skyrocketed in the last 10 to 15 years. And so moving to a more affordable place seemed like it would at the very least be a great testing ground for some ideas without incurring a ton of debt. Did you feel like that was part of your decision making, being able to kind of try your idea out with less risk?
Yeah, that was very much part of it. I felt like I could put in minimal amounts of investment. Obviously a farm is still a huge labor and financial investment, but I had some flexibility here. If things didn't work out, I didn't have hundreds of thousands of dollars sunk into a piece of property in an area where, maybe I couldn't sell my product. So yeah, having some flexibility in the startup years of my business was very important, especially financially.
Now, there's another side to that coin where there's a lot of challenges involved with trying to do the type of food production that you do in a more rural, less, food-centric or food-cultured area. And we'll get to that in a bit. How big is your farm overall, and how much is devoted to pasture and to vegetable production and then to the general homestead area? If you could give us just kind of an idea of the setting.
Yeah, so currently, the vegetables are the mainstay of the farm. That is how the farm makes the majority of its money. So we have about an acre in vegetable production, which seems like nothing, but everything is done very intensively. So a lot is gotten out of an acre. An acre is treated more like 3 to 4 acres. But anyways, about an acre in vegetable production. That does not include plastic culture, so like greenhouse and high tunnels. And then
how many of those do you have?
One greenhouse for microgreens and all of our seedlings. So all the plants are started off, by seed here on the farm. So one large greenhouse heated with propane, and then one high tunnel out in the field, which is it's entirely solar, and then we'll have 2 more caterpillar tunnels next spring as well. And that's for season extension.
And one greenhouse for the goddamn ducks.
And one for the ducks. And then in regards to pasture, gosh, let me think. We probably have about 6 acres right now in pasture. And that right now that carries 10 sheep, about 160 laying hens, and about 20 ducks. That is also, that pasture is not up to full potential. So that can support more than what it does, but that's currently where we're at. And then in regards to the homestead area, that's probably about an acre and a half at max.
As far as the pasture is concerned, there's about 6 acres that are currently being rotationally grazed. We got the chickens following the sheep, 2 groups of sheep. The rams and the ewes are separated currently, but we're in the middle of changing pasture from kind of naturalized invasive grasses to a better grass mix for our animals. Last year, the sheep were on a predetermined paddock size that would feed them for about a day and a half to 2 days, and now we're getting about 5.5 to 6 days out of the same size because of the pasture being turned. And we'll talk more about that in a different episode when we talk about some different grazing techniques, and we'll be interviewing someone else that I know at that point. So if you're going to start an operation like this, again, we talked a little bit about location and convenience. Let's talk about, if someone's deciding on location, what are some various factors that will help you decide that?
Yeah, so as a certified organic producer, I have some things that were very specific to my land when scouting it out in regards to buffer zones and...
Can you explain buffer zones?
Yeah, so a buffer zone is so we are bordered on all directions by conventional commodity crops like corn and soy and sugar beets and sometimes wheat. So for us as a certified organic farm, we have to have physical buffer zones between us and the conventional fields to ensure the integrity of our product. So, to eliminate drift and spray and such like that from reaching our crops and animals. So having buffer zones was really important. The other thing as a certified organic producer was also ensuring that the land was at least certifiable. If not, if it wasn't certifiable, then it had to have 3 years of a transition period from whence it had last been conventionally managed. So that was also very important to me when scouting out land. If you are not looking to certify your property, there are some things that are very important regardless. One thing, whether you're organic or not, is checking out the quality of your soil. If you're in the United States, all of the soil for the country is mapped out online, and you can find out your soil name and its qualities and its characteristics, both chemically and physically, through the NRCS Soil Survey. It's a really great tool for helping you determine what your land is capable of.
What kind of soil do we have here?
We have silty loam.
I think that would be my stripper name. Silty loam.
Silty loam. We have a silty loam. So we have a lot of fine particles, which means that we can have issues with compaction and excessive moisture. Because of that, I did tile some of my land for better drainage, which is important.
And what's tile?
Tiling is where you set up underground piping systems that move water away from your field. So it's drainage pipes that drain water and then move it to a header, which then feeds into like a canal or a drainage ditch. Mm-hmm. So the one thing is soil surveys. So looking at the quality and the characteristics of your soil, it's extremely important, because if you're looking to, say, grow carrots and you have very, very heavy clay soil, that's going to really shift your production. So it's important to know that beforehand. Another thing is water quality testing, knowing the status of your water. If you have a well, what is the well capabilities? What is your pump capabilities? Have your water tested. Are there contamination issues? Is it heavy with lead or arsenic? All really big things that will very drastically shift your ability to grow or produce products and process them. And then I guess, lastly, the other thing to think about is, it's a simple thing, but, weather, winds, just the general feel of your property and how the weather relates to what you're doing. You have regularly 80-mile-an-hour winds, having structures and fencing and tunnels that can withstand are very, very important. So just making sure that your operation holds up over time.
Now, what about physical proximity to a more densely populated area or like a local food economy? Are these things that you think about? Because we live in a township that the closest town has 300 people. Most of our business happens in the closest city, which is a half an hour or so away. And I'm not sure how many people live there, but it's, a couple tens of thousands and
60,
70,000 people. And there's a large, chemical international employer there that brings lots of people. How important was that, being close to a place where you thought that you would have a place to peddle your wares, or did you feel as if you could just create that once you got there?
No, I can't emphasize enough how important it is to make sure that you have a market for what you're trying to sell. If you're a hobbyist, that's one thing, but if you're trying to make a living off of what you do, which is what we do, year-round full-time farmer, you can grow all the carrots in the world, but if you cannot sell them, it doesn't matter how great they are and how well you can grow them. So yeah, first and foremost was making sure there was a market for what I wanted to produce. Every place has a food culture, so getting a sense of your food culture. When I moved back to this area, I went to the local grocery stores. I looked at pricing. I looked at what was on the shelves. I went to the farmer's market. I looked at what producers were growing, how they were being priced. Are there natural food stores? Are they co-ops? Again, what are they selling? What are they pricing it at? So yes, doing that market research is absolutely essential. If you find, for me, I was the first certified organic producer in the county and at the farmer's market. And I had identified this as a nascent market. So it was sort of ready for an organic producer. That being said, it's, being in a rural area, it's a challenge, and you don't exactly know how you're going to be received and the longevity of what you're trying to do.
Tell us about some of those challenges in the rural area specifically.
I think specifically, for me as an organic producer, organic for a lot of people around here is more of a cultural term. It's the idea of an animal. It's, organic is what people say when they see a cow out on grass, or when they see a chicken running around. Organic is like a sense of something. It's a cultural term, if you will. But what a lot of people around here fail to realize is that it is a legal term, and that we pay to do it, and we strictly adhere to national organic program guidelines. And so a lot of it has been consumer education regarding food production, regarding food practices, regarding food preparation, food storage. There's a lot of food education that happens for us to sell our product. That being said, once it happens and people are satisfied with the end product, things sell. But there's a lot of communicating to do before that happens. And sometimes we just have people who say that organic is not for them, and they prefer conventional produce.
It's like a government conspiracy or something like that. That's something that I think probably a lot of the meat cutters and butchers out there in rural areas run into, is especially if you've been in the business in a larger city or more urban area and then moved to the country, everything can feel a little bit backwards. And I think it's vice versa, going from the country to the city and being a meat cutter, it can also feel like everything's backwards. Most of, my teeth were cut mostly in a more metropolitan area with a very strong food culture in the Pacific Northwest and in Chicago. And moving out here, it's just a total shock sometimes seeing what it is that people will put on a plate. For instance, a rolled rump roast. If anybody knows what that is, I stand by that being one of the most useless cuts of meat ever, because you've got like the end of the bottom round, you've got the knuckle, all of these various pieces of sirloin and other muscles come together in this junction, and they all cook at different temperatures and times and are cooked differently. And there's a ton of connective tissue, but people out here fucking love it, and I don't understand it. And that's been a major challenge for me. What do you think about urban areas? What's the reciprocal of that? What are some challenges about starting a small, diversified farm in an urban area?
Yeah, so the challenge of that is that the markets are saturated, which is just me saying that there are lots of other people just like me trying to grow and sell the same product for the same price. So in those areas, you're really peddling your story. You're really trying to sell what makes you personally unique, what makes your farm unique, why people should buy from you as opposed to the other girl across the way. So yeah, the saturated markets, the challenge of driving in. So, your farm is most likely going to be at least an hour away from your market, your urban market. So there's a lot of traveling, a lot of delivery, a lot of vehicle time that goes into getting your product to where it can sell. And yeah, standing out in the crowds is very challenging. And a lot of places, accounts are taken. You go to food co-ops and they've been working with the same producer for 5 or 10 years. And so it can take a long time to get to get your product into high profile places.
So you've been selling meat here off the farm since you started, and you've been a livestock manager in other states. What are some challenges as far as raising and selling meat in a farm this size in, I guess, any type of area, given today's food culture?
I think one issue is if somebody's used to going to the grocery, whether it's like a Meijer or Hannaford's, depending on where you live, or a Costco or Sam's Club, whatever that is, people are so used to meat being ridiculously cheap. I don't know what grocery store bacon goes for, but gosh, I can tell you, certified organic.
$3.99 a pound.
Okay. Certified organic bacon is at least 12. I've seen 12 to 15 easily. You start getting into, specialty cuts, you could easily get into $20, $22 a pound. So yeah, the price is a obstacle and a hurdle. So again, food education and consumer education. Why is this costing so much more? Why would they want to buy this? What makes this more special? And so, for me, again, it's, people come out to the farm to get a lot of their product from us. So, having them see the process, having them see the animals out, on pasture, on grass, has really made all the difference. And being able to interact with them as well has made a huge difference. It kind of brings it to life a little bit more. And then I find once they've had it and know what they're getting and know what it tastes like and know why it's important, why it's special, and then they tend to come back and will be repeat customers. But initially, I think it can be hard to breach that price gap.
Sure. And I think we were kind of talking about this when we were interviewing an apprentice earlier at dinner tonight. We're talking about, the fact is that farms this size cannot supply meat to the world, the United States alone, based on our current diet. People go out and everybody wants a 16-ounce steak, or they want an 8-ounce to 12-ounce burger, 2 to 3 meals a day. Farms this size cannot. There's not enough farms in this country to supply the country's demand for meat. So industrialized meat is something that's inevitable for us to supply the current demand, and I think that's also kind of a challenge, because we really can't preach that this is the only way to do it, and the other way has to exist. I think it's just about digging up the customers that we can find that are interested in this. Mm. Just as an example about profit margins and how much money you don't make as a small producer, let's talk about raising hogs. So let's say you're buying in a feeder hog at
$75 maybe?
75, yeah, 75 to 100 a head. And then let's figure out just a very rough sketch of what it would cost to raise one of those hogs. So how old are they when they go to slaughter? How much do they eat in that time? What's the price of grain? Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So, I do rough estimates. I like round numbers. If I'm trying to just figure out something on the quick to have an estimated value of something, I like to round numbers up to make it easy. And I like to be conservative. I don't want to underguess and then find myself in a pickle financially later. So I'm very specific about that. So yeah, a hog. Let's say you buy a hog $75 to $100, $125 a head.
Let's say 100 on average.
Maybe, you should be getting them at around 6 weeks of age, 6 to 8 weeks, no more than that. Typically, I like to estimate that a hog from birth to slaughter, about 6 months, and they will be consuming, free choice, 800 to 1,000 pounds of grain per hog. To make numbers even and simple, I say it's about 50 cents a pound for certified organic grain. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's a little less, but when you factor in gas and all that, it's about 50 cents a pound. So that's $500 worth of feed, let's say.
And then it's $100 for the hog, so you're $600 into it. What are you going to sell? What's a good average price for hanging weight for a hog? Let's say you're selling whole carcasses. Let's not get into selling cuts and all that, because then we have to deal with processing fees and various things. Let's just talk about selling shares, whole and half shares. Yeah.
So if somebody was doing a half a hog, it would be $4.25 per hanging weight, and if it was if it was a half a hog, it'd be $4.50 hanging weight. If it was a whole hog, it'd be $4.25. Those are my most recent prices. It's probably gone up a little since then, but let's say $4.25. Okay, so
at $4.25 for a whole hog at 225 pounds, because I assume that's about a target weight, that's $956. So from that, you take away the $500 in grain, you take away the $100 per head, you take away the $80 kill fee.
Consumer pays that, though.
That's true. Okay. If you're selling that whole hog, not taking into account transportation costs, any infrastructure whatsoever that you're spending on the hogs, any vaccinations, or, holistic or not, any sorts of bedding materials, mineral supplement, anything like that, not taking any of that into account, just the price of the hog and the feed itself, you'll come out at $356 profit. Now, by my calculations, once you figure in every other factor aside from labor, you're probably down to about $150 to $200 of profit per hog. And so you don't really come out with much. And where we live, to tell someone that you're selling whole hog shares for $4.25 a pound hanging weight is they look at you like they just saw a ghost, and that's really the minimum, So imagine if anyone out there raises hogs, think about raising 20 hogs at, $200 a head. That's only $4,000, and raising 20 hogs is a hell of a lot of work for $4,000. So lamb and beef are a little bit different, just because there's grazing and there's more labor involved in various things. But let's talk about eggs really quickly. We sell our eggs. What do you sell your eggs for?
Certified organic pasture rotated eggs are $6 a dozen.
And so at the grocery store, I've seen them between $6 and $8. So that's a fairly good deal, I'd say.
Around here, we are by far the most expensive egg producer in rural mid-Michigan. I've seen prices much higher elsewhere, but yeah, for here we're quite high. Eggs are kind of what I'd call a bit of a loss leader. It brings people to the stand; they want them, and they're very attractive as offering a diversified product base. But we don't make a lot of money on them. To start, I would say it's 3 to 4 pounds of feed that goes into each dozen of eggs. So right off the bat, we have about $2 that gets taken away from that $6 egg price that goes right into feed. The cost of our egg cartons, even when we purchase them in very large bulk prices with pallets and large shipping freighters, are still 35 to 37 cents a carton, sometimes upwards to 40 cents a carton. So, feed and carton right there take up, at least a third of the cost.
More than 30%.
And then from there, we have the infrastructure. They're rotated around. So they have a large egg mobile that I built for them, which of course they have to pay for. There's the net fencing. There is the cost to incubate them when they're chicks, the high electricity cost for that goes into their lifespan. And, not to mention the labor of moving them 3 times a week, plus egg washing and packaging and cooler for those as well. So yes,
and
eggs,
oyster shells and grit, yes, and mineral and the energizer and all kinds of stuff.
So yes, eggs are, again, it's one of those things. It's a very tight margin. So we really try to keep our labor costs down to kind of help us out with those. But even at $6, we're not getting rich on eggs.
Livestock's very difficult to make money on in comparison to vegetables.
Yes, for sure. Vegetables have a pretty high profit margin in comparison. That's why they're the sort of mainstay of the farm. And as of right now, the vegetables kind of continue to subsidize the livestock portion of things.
Just to wrap this up a bit, you've given some talks at various universities about farm finances, bookkeeping, organizational things of that nature. Do you have any resources for people who are starting out? And I know that sometimes the bookkeeping and the numbers is maybe the most daunting part of it for someone for starting a business. Do you have any resources for people aside from coming to see you talk?
Yeah, so there's a few different authors and a couple of books that come to mind. And I know I'll be forgetting a couple. But one is Fearless Farm Finances. There's also an author, and I'm blanking on his book right now, but his name is Richard Wiswall, and he is a great author for farm finances as well. There's a great Canadian publication on crop planning that actually gets into the farm financing of things as well that I'd highly recommend. I think it's called Crop Planning, and it's in conjunction with Canadian agriculture. Of course, too, I might recommend, I think Elliot Coleman gets a little bit into crop planning and overall profitability as well. So it might be worthwhile looking at some of his stuff in addition.
Great. Okay. That's all I have for you today. I hope that you thought that was fun.
It was really fun.
And I hope that everybody thought that was interesting. If you have any other questions for Sarah or myself going forward, just to find us on the Facebook group or via Instagram at A Farm Butcher or Sarah's at Good Stead Farm. Until next time.
30 miles on the Gulf Stream, I hear the south wind moan. The bridge is getting lower, the shrimp boat's coming home. The old man down in the corner slowly turned his head, takes a sip from his whiskey bottle, and this is what he said. I was born in the rain on a Poncha train underneath the Louisiana moon. I don't mind the strain of a hurricane, they come around every June. The high black water, a devil's daughter, she's hard, she's cold, and she's mean. But nobody taught her it takes a lot of water to wash away New Orleans.
Well, I think that was an amazing episode, chopped full of great information. A lot of that will be in the show notes. And I encourage you all to check out Good Stead Farm on Instagram at Good Stead Farm, and check out their Facebook group or page and see what they're up to. And if you have any questions about what you've heard, you are more than welcome to reach out to Sarah or David. And David is at a farm butcher on Instagram. And I hope you are taking notes, because I think there was a lot of good information in this episode, especially about discovering, what's profitable when starting a farm, and finding the reasons and how to get a market, and etc. And if you want to contact us, you could do so. themeatblockpodcast at gmail.com. Tweet us at themeatblockpod, or Instagram at themeatblock. If you want to get a hold of David, he is at a farm butcher. If you want to get a hold of Ryan, he is at Gather and Break on Instagram. If you want to get a hold of me, I'm at American Butcher on Instagram and Facebook. So please send us questions, or if you have ideas for future shows or topics or guests, or if you have a retail or slaughter horror story for our upcoming Halloween episode, please send them our way. And if you're looking for ways to help out the show, the best way to do that right now is to type in The Meat Block on your podcast app device and leave us a 5-star review and a comment. That really means a lot to us. And another way to help us out is to use the hashtag #TheMeatBlock and tag a friend. Also, maybe suggest a friend joins our Facebook page. A lot of great conversation happening over there. All right, that's enough of this. I got to get back to vacationing. And until next time, keep your knives sharp and live in the margin.
Takes a drink from his whiskey bottle, and this is what he said. I was born in the rain on the Poncha train underneath the Louisiana moon. Don't mind the strain of a hurricane, they come around every June. High black water, the devil's daughter, she's hard, she's cold, and she's mean. But nobody taught her it takes a lot of water to wash away New Orleans. I was born in the rain on a Poncha train underneath the Louisiana moon. I don't mind the strain of a hurricane, they come around every June. The high black water, the devil's daughter, she's hard, she's cold, and she's mean. But nobody taught her it takes a lot of water to wash away New Orleans. Nobody taught her it takes a lot of water to wash away New Orleans.